This video has not been officially sponsored in any way and is not endorsed by any company whose products are featured in it. Any perceived product placement is done so with the intent of comedy and critique. As such, it should not be considered an endorsement by any of the companies in question. Are we clear on that? We good? Okay, let's continue. Didn't mean to slow you down. Some things that have become increasingly more common with each passing year are advertisements, product placements, and just generally people trying to sell you things even if they have absolutely nothing to do with whatever it is you're watching at the time. Like, you probably watched an advertisement before watching this video, something I'm eternally grateful for. But a lot of people just don't seem to notice how much advertising is in everything nowadays. Like, you can't even walk down the street anymore in the city without being assaulted by it. In anime, product placements and in-show advertisements are rare, generally because what we have are not true product placement. In fact, the only real good true example of product placement that I can think of is a show called Tiger and Bunny, where actual legitimate companies paid to have their company logos plastered over all of the various superhero characters in it. But today we're going to be looking at a show that prefers the less official kind of product placement. It is about a Dark Lord from a stereotypical fantasy universe who comes to Earth, a rather poor man. And like some poor men with no money, no job experience, but a burning desire to be useful, where does he go? Well, my gentle viewers, he goes to McDonald's. Or, rather, in this case, McRonald's. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the devil is a part-timer. Let's jam. Do you play tabletop RPGs? Like traditional pen and paper ones? Because if not, you should, because it would make my job right now a lot easier. But if you do, try to imagine the most stereotypical fantasy setting that you can think of. Take a group of warriors, feel free to add the of light suffix at the end of it. Take them and pit them against a group of demonic beings hell-bent on world domination. Did you get that far? Okay, good. Next, take the leader of the warriors, usually a paladin or some other such heroic kind of character, also their direct counterpart from the evil side, like some kind of dark king, queen, or in this case, the freaking devil. Take them, throw them through a mystical wormhole, and have them come out in modern-day Japan. Hilarity ensues. Here's where the twist comes in that doesn't make the most logical sense. The devil decides that he needs to build up power in this new world, after which he can then take his new army back to his old world and reconquer it. How do you gain power in our world? You get money. How do you get money? You get a job, which eventually somehow leads him to become shift manager at the local McDonald's. Now you may ask the obvious question, why doesn't he just go rob a bank or use his demonic powers to convince people to just give him money? Well, that's because here on Earth, for some reason, he doesn't have any demonic powers, probably so that this whole situation actually works. It's also probably because without said restriction, we wouldn't have particular moments of hilarity.
Right, goose! Okay, you two. Behave yourselves.
This story is a comedy, and as usual, with general comedies, there is no overarching storyline. Your enjoyment of the show solely depends on your sense of humor. Thankfully, mine is varied enough where I was able to enjoy this show without any problems. Now, there could have been an overarching story. They could have done something like the devil's rise to power once again and his eventual reconquering of his old homeland, but then again, that probably would have been rather formulaic and boring. Instead, what we have is a story that highlights a fall from grace, while making it both funny and enjoyable. It's also a show that is pretty much exactly what it says on the tin, or box in my case. What really sells the show in my mind, however, is the wonderful chemistry that the characters hold. Now, at first glance, most of the characters are fairly one-dimensional. If you ignore the entirety of the fantasy backstory, you have your endearing try-hard protagonist, his loyal best friend, the tsundere love interest, the moe love triangle filler, the layabout loser, and the other love interest that doesn't have a hope in hell but tries anyway. The added fantasy backstory adds some much needed flair to all of these characters. The devil Sado and his relationship with his loyal servant Shiro can be best described as saying that they are like an old married couple. They have their disagreements over the current living situation of the devil's new castle, but they never really come to blows, considering that Shiro still considers Sado to be his lord and master, but still sees it as his duty as the Dark Lord's general to make sure that Sado is properly cared for, regardless of his overenthusiastic recklessness. Sado himself is almost an enigma. Most of the information we are given about what he was like in the fantasy world is from the Warriors of Light kind of people who obviously have their own biases. He never truly acts like he is capable of world domination, though he just talks about it quite a bit. This leads me to believe that he either had the biggest, fastest heel face turn since the Grinch, or he was never really that evil to begin with. As soon as he enters the real world, he becomes concerned about it, making sure that he follows all of this new world's laws and systems. Something which any normal Dark Lord of all would never bother themselves with, magic powers or no. He becomes the kind of guy that would help old ladies across the street. His coworkers love him because of how enthusiastic and nice he is around them. His bosses probably love him because of how hardworking he is and how much he's trying to promote the brand of the store, even so much of spreading Christmas cheer to get customers to come in one particular episode. And you know those companies, they just love to slap Christmas on everything. The further we get into the show, he keeps proving that really, he doesn't act evil at all, even when the chance to do good is extremely more difficult. It's the one thing that was always stuck in the back of my mind as I watched the show. I always expected them to come out with this plot twist of how the devil was really never that evil, even in the old world, and that all of his evil deeds were just lies or myths, truths told to our heroes so that they would go and fight the devil to get him out of the way. But you know, that never really happened, which was kind of odd to me, honestly. Which actually makes the whole situation with the hero, Emmy, that much more confusing. After having almost defeated the Dark Lord at his castle, she follows him to the real world with the full intention of slaying him, but then she never truly does. She gets rightly confused by the devil's upbeat and helpful nature, making it so that, given her morals, she can't kill him, as she never actually witnesses him do anything wrong. That doesn't mean she ever trusts him, quite the opposite in fact, which makes her tsundere personality truly shine, because it's not like she likes him or anything. Baka! My biggest problem with Emmy is that she keeps bringing up that one plot point that, as far as she was aware, Sado was responsible for the death of her parents. She keeps reminding that to herself constantly, just so that she gets it in their head that, no, this guy is evil. But that just gets tiring after a while. Last, for main characters, is the impossibly large-breasted Chiho, who fits the role of the straight man, considering she has no attachment to the fantasy world. Chiho is a character who is much needed, someone who doesn't know all of the backstory, but just goes by what she sees. As such, she provides the role as the one who humanizes Sado. She may be klutzy and uncoordinated, but as the devil's main underling in the workplace, her treatment is the primary gauge of just how much Sado has changed since coming to McDonald's. Let this be a lesson to everyone. If you ever meet a supreme evil overlord, go have him work at McDonald's, because that'll whip him in the shape real good. I've heard that their training programs are actually quite reputable. The art is rather, what's a good word? Attractive. For the most part, it's rather bright and colorful to help add to the show's comedy rather than try to change its tone. The animation itself, while simple at times, leads itself to great effect at those small moments when just the right kind of charismatic flair is necessary. It would have been nice to see some better special effects when the fantasy aspects come into play, rather than the, bright white light beams! But considering that the fights were never really a major focus, I guess that's forgivable. To a point. While the opening and ending songs for the show were rather forgettable, the music overall was rather pleasant. It was able to capture both sides of the show's personality, the rather overbearing comedic side, and also being able to flip to, oh my god guys, this is where the fantasy epicness happens! Which was really rather impressive. Lastly, because I can, let's give brief praise to the dub. I I honestly expected to switch to subtitles with this one, under the apparently false assumption that the English would make the rather awkward culture shock moments of the show worse than they actually needed to be. And I also paired that with my own personal knowledge that finding a comedy anime that has been dubbed well is really hard because they are rare. Shout out to Sergeant Frog. Thankfully though, my fears were needless thanks to some really well done performances. And there was one in particular that I want to bring mention to. In English dubs, I have in the past gone on record to say that they have never done moe characters well. That's a thing I have said. They either have the character sound way older than they look to play off how the character actually acts, or they force it down all the way so that the voice is almost like they're squeaking. So not only was I impressed with the dub as a whole, because I was, but I was also very impressed with Tia Ballard's performance as Chiho. This being the first English moe voice that I could not only stand, but thoroughly enjoyed listening to. Honestly, I was impressed. At the end of the day, the question you have to ask is how seriously do you want to take this show? It has enough serious moments in it to somewhat justify a negative reaction towards the lack of any actions towards background motivations that the characters have. Instead focusing heavily on the thing that the devil wants to impress his superior so he might get a promotion. But if there is a flaw in this show, it is thankfully not the humor. Which again, I enjoyed, at least till about the show's second half-ish. At that point, a bunch of time is spent almost in rehash mode as they try to almost forget that the mid-season climax ever happened. The part where they all came together as a team. Yeah. Let's try to pretend that never happened. It wants to go back to the status quo, to have all that tension between the characters of should I trust them or not, and it just seemed rather forced by that point. There's also the matter of, well, it never really ended, it just kinda stopped. Yay for read the manga endings, right? Am I right, guys? Yeah, that's what I thought. Still, though, I can't say that I wasted my time with this series, even with the poor ending. It's enjoyable, but more like popcorn material rather than a show that you can really sink your teeth into. As such, after carefully considering all aspects of the show and letting my thoughts stew in a deep fryer before it getting double salted and handed back to me, at which point I hand it back! Because you should never take any of that double salted bullshit. After all that, with no qualms, I can safely recommend that you buy The Devil is a Part-Timer. Ultimately, it comes down to your humor, so you may want to stream a few episodes first, but I still think it would be a worthy addition to your shelf. And speaking of, at the time of this video, The Devil is a Part-Timer has been licensed and is available in North America from Funimation Entertainment, both in home video format, being DVD and Blu-ray, as well as on their website for legal streaming if you happen to have access to that. There's also Hulu if you're an American, but not anyone else, because Hulu are jerks. As for alternate anime recommendations, I point you towards Maou-sama as another example of a demon lord turned good, though more with an economic bent rather than fry flipping. Also, for a more comedic series, there's Squid Girl, for a character who dreams of taking over the world, but ultimately for comedic reasons never gets beyond the beach. Between those two, you should find something to your liking. And that's it from me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter. Okay, I wasn't able to figure out wherever else in the video to put this, so I'm just gonna put it here on the back of the case. It says, "Meet Satan, Lord of the Fries." What? I get the whole thing. He's at McDonald's. He's fry boy, but that's amazing. I couldn't figure out anywhere else to put that, so there it is. There it is at the end. So follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Cody Nelson for donating already. You are amazing. So until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.